Good evening, welcome to the August 30th Public Safety Building Committee meeting. This meeting is being recorded for Cablecast and YouTube presentation by Area 58 Community Access Media. The video of this meeting is not to be considered an official public record. Alrighty, let's get the business out of the way. We have minutes from August 23rd and August 20th and July 26th. Anybody have any amendments?
Madam Chairman, on August 30th, I was here, but Rob told me that he thought he recommended P3's position was to go with option one, and that's not it. I mean, the August 23rd, yes.
I thought the position was to go with
Basis option one. Yeah,
No, well, base is option
I'm sorry.
two.
Well,
It's
then
base and
whatever.
then 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So you want to
I'll
amend,
amend it.
so
Okay.
amend the minutes to show that P3s are amended the base. Any other amendments on August 23rd? Motion to accept the minutes as amended. And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. The July 26th, any amendments? Motion to accept the minutes as written. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
No one was doing it.
All righty, so let's get right to the HVAC. Well, no, let's start with the easier subject would be the septic. And Art will speak to that, with some calculations today.
Okay, I met with Chief Dillon, and to obtain the number of uses for the holding cell in past years. And we came up with the two highest years, which was 2014 and 2015. There were 38 arrests in 2014, there were 40 arrests in 2015. Since then, it's gone down. So those are your two highest usages. So that averages 39 arrests. And since the prisoner is either bailed or goes to the Plymouth County House of Correction for the night and then on to court tomorrow, there's no showers, no water, it's just a toilet. That's it.
So how many times did you go up?
Well, the flush count is, well,
So what the chief is gonna do is he's gonna put a meter on the handle, see?
I was wondering how you were gonna do it.
there's
So-
probably some federal statute that says you can't do that.
Anyway, I recalculated everything that the engineers gave us at the last meeting to come up with what I consider an actual daily usage for everything, fire, police, the trailer, and there were a number of incorrect assumptions that the engineers made in their analysis, most notably highway department, which they have two sinks that connect to the system, that's it. Black water goes into its own holding tank and is pumped. They calculated 3 bedrooms for the trailer for the fire department. There's only 2 EMT paramedics on duty at any time, but that's all we can afford. So there won't be 3.
But if there's bedrooms, you gotta,
There's only 2 bedrooms in there.
well, then.
They got a big living room in the middle. I've been in there, so 2 bedrooms. 1 male, 1 female. So anyway, I also took a look at the meeting room. They consider this 100 seats in here, 5 gallons per seat per day. We don't use that.
No, but and you're never gonna get 100 seats in here.
No.
So I think that the way that, what I think we should do is, I think we should, if you don't mind, if you could give me what you have calculated, and let me write a letter back to them. Because I agree with everything you're saying.
Well, what they said was that this is passed on to the Board of Health, and the Board of Health can approve it. So,
Well, Well, it is a local option, it's under 10,000 gallons.
We plan on having this on the agenda at our next meeting on the second Tuesday in September, whatever that date is. So the Board of Health will take care of it at that point. Because,
But can we go in there with our assumptions and not theirs? And get them to redo that letter? Only because I don't want, no,
He's the chair.
I understand he's the chair of the Board of Health, but I'm trying to protect the Board of Health from the Board of Health.
Sure.
So what I'd like to do is have the scientific calculation match what you're saying in case someone appeals the Board of Health, which is unappealable, but you never know. And I just want to, I want to make sure that we're doing this. I read that letter and I called them, and wasn't at the last meeting, and I said, this is totally incorrect, you can't get 100 people in here standing. You can't get 100 people in here, so just 100 people got me the veins popping out of my neck. And
Initially,
then, I'm not understanding the use of it.
Well, that's per cell alone.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the overage was like 8 gallons or something stupid. But it was so minuscule that I wanted to jump through the phone, because they're supposed to be working for us to get our project completed. They're not supposed to be throwing roadblocks up so that they can redesign the septic system and get a change order. And that's how I read it. And shame on me if I'm being, looking at it negatively, but that's how I read the letter. I'm like, this is about as easy a Title V solution as I've ever seen.
yeah,
And everything you're saying, we've done in other towns.
Yeah.
Actual usage, leave the Title V table, go to actual meter readings or actual usage, and prove that it's not a detriment to the system.
yeah. And it's not, based on my calculations, and we'll have the health agent also review them.
Right.
And
But they're the design engineers, so
we
we have to
have-
get them to submit it.
we have plenty of capacity. That, as a townsperson, as a taxpayer, that's what I want to know. Do we have the capacity,
Right.
or are we living on
And we live in
the
a
razor edge?
because we don't want to have a system that fails and all the systems go down.
No, no, so, that was my object in taking, calculator to their numbers, so. And there were just too many assumptions on their part, like highway's not connected.
They're not assumptions, they didn't do the due diligence.
Well,
What did you come up with for a cell gallons per day based on the chief's?
based on 39, and again, let's see,
Just because that was the big number.
it was, that was,
They have 400, 200 cells.
yeah, which they don't hold them overnight. They cannot hold them because it's not sprinkled.
Yeah. So what
So-
did you come up with for a?
So I took 39 days divided by 365, which is 4%,
I'll bring it up to you tomorrow. Or Frank.
based on the highest 2 years. And then I took 4% of the 200, and you're basically looking at 8 gallons per day on a cell. That's for not only the 39 days, but for the other 300 and,
Yeah, so you go from
40.
400 to 16,
yeah, I mean, so it's,
which leaves spare capacity.
So you will-
for something else.
Formalize this and get it to
If you
Dan.
can send me the email, I'll write the letter to them.
okay.
And I don't think the engineer had any problems with our
No,
saying.
no.
I don't think so either, I think that's a CYA letter on his part, in case something goes wrong 2 years from now, he can say, I told you so. Right. And if it was even remotely a problem, I would be recommending that we do more, but we're not increasing the use here.
But, no, I
Your
mean,
problem that exists there would exist whether we build the station or not.
yeah, I mean, you're talking about, the only thing I did increase the capacity on the new police station because there will be showers in there.
Right,
And so I took that into account, you know.
right, that's a different color.
So I calculated that differently. I didn't just say, same usage here, same there. I increased the usage based on the fact there are showers.
Okay.
Not that they'll be used all that much, but it's still usage.
I'm just excited we're on the same page. This is like major progress for me. Page is the person at the end of the table.
Okay, so that takes care of the septic, let's go to HVAC.
What about, you want to do the generator real quick?
Okay, generator real quick.
Do you have any preference on diesel versus?
Yes, I do. I've actually reached out to a couple of local chiefs that have built new police stations recently. Chief Michael Ailes, the town of Cushnet. Actually, I had a meeting there today. I couldn't make it for Semlac chiefs. But, and I also spoke with Chief Matt Clancy, formerly of Plimpton, now in Duxbury. He just built a new station. There's a couple of ways to look at this. Both of these chiefs have got diesel generators as backup. Neither of these chiefs have gas available to them. There's, as we all probably know, there are pros and cons to both the diesel and the gas. One of the major pros to gas is its availability. It's cheaper, it's cleaner. Where diesel, it might be cheap, it's got to be trucked in. And diesel can also go stale if it's sitting in the tank for a long period of time. Duxbury has a process in which they have the DPW come over once a year and they siphon out the diesel and put it to a truck and then they replenish it. So it was mentioned to me that diesel is probably a good idea on account of if you go for certification of your police station, that's something. The diesel generator has to be locked up and monitored, and it has to be different from what you regularly power your building from. And we're going to be heating our building from gas. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the committee on what we go with. I could go with diesel or gas. What's the board's recommendation, the committee's recommendation?
Can I input on this?
Please.
All right. I've installed probably 50 generators, maybe 60. Every single Continental Cablevision, then Media One, then AT&T Broadband, and then Comcast Digital Hub I built. I was lucky to have had a no-bid contract for 10 years, and if you get your signal from Comcast, it comes through a Pilata building. What we found, two things. One, the gas generators are not as strong and don't have as high an output as the diesel generators do. You need a larger generator to get to get the same output as you would with a diesel generator. That's number one. Number two, the gas generators, this generator is going to do what's called an exercise once a week for an hour, and it's going to run. With the diesel generators, that's fine. With a gas generator, you actually have to put it under load every so often, usually quarterly, meaning you have to shut everything down in the police station and put it under load because condensation builds up with the combustion of gas in the system that runs the generator.
That's the type that we have in the basement here now in the town hall police station is a car engine that's run on gas. And they
Natural
wanna-
gas.
Yes.
Right,
They
so,
want to put it on load, yeah.
yeah, you have to put it on load. So that's a maintenance issue. There's a little more maintenance to the diesel than there is on the generator, on the natural gas. But if you're gonna use this as any type of a shelter or a shelter-in-place post-event, because it's not a shelter pre-event, because the structure won't be designed for a shelter pre-event. It'll be a shelter post-event. Should you do that, it needs to be independent of the utility delivering your energy. In other words,
Gas or electric.
if you're gas or electric, it needs to be diesel.
Yeah.
So, and the reason for that is if there's a catastrophic event that takes down the gas or the electric, you have to have the ability to be able to get fuel to the generator and keep the generator going. You might not have heat, but you at least will have the ability to plug in electric heaters. You'll have the ability to keep your comm center up, your radios, all of the things that are important to keeping your system going. My recommendation would be gas, only because you're not near a natural resource. If we were next to a wetland, it would be a no-brainer that all of a sudden, I'm sorry, diesel. Did I say gas?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant diesel. Thank you for correcting me. My mind's churning. So my recommendation always is for diesel if there's not a habitat issue, and we don't have a habitat issue on this one. But again, we'll accommodate either one. The diesel generator is also cheaper than a natural gas generator. So,
Am
Well,
am I
that's the
right,
opposite, we were
Yeah.
told last week.
no, it's cheaper.
am I right, and
Initial purchase.
Initial purchase,
does it?
not operations.
The diesel holds its fuel in a tank right underneath it. but it
Yeah,
has
under
to
the
be-
belly.
Does
So-
it have to be encapsulated underneath their
Yeah,
system?
it's called an interstitial tank. There'll be an internal monitoring of the tank, and there'll be a monitoring of the interstitial space, so that if you ever have a leak, the interstitial space is 1.25 times the tank. So if your tank let go, it would hold all of the fuel, you wouldn't have an environmental, and it would ring the alarm that you have liquid in the interstitial space. Right, and that alarm goes to the same alarms that you'd be monitoring the generator from. And you're gonna have to do that. So when you walk in the lobby of your building, you're gonna have a fire alarm panel and a generator panel. And the generator panel will say normal operation, unless you have an alarm.
So it's understandable why the two police chiefs I spoke with have diesel generators as their backup generators.
And just for clarity, the diesel would still test weekly,
Absolutely.
but you don't need to do the quarter full load test?
You don't have to do a full
Quarter-
load test.
Oh.
At least we didn't, let me put it to you this way, we didn't when I did all the Comcast sites. It wasn't something that they had to do. They did them on the natural gas ones. We'd go to battery for what we call the glitch, where we transfer it from permanent power to auxiliary power. Of course,
Is this something we need to decide this evening?
I think we should.
no, I don't think so. I don't think it affects the design at all for another month and a half. You guys can.
We're
You guys
talking
can do
about
your
it
own
now, might as
research if
well.
you
Yeah,
want.
I mean, it's all fresh and I don't
Yeah.
have any objection to either way. I was looking for the chief's input, so.
Yeah.
If you would ask me at this point, what I've heard tonight and speaking to the other chiefs, I'd say let's go with the diesel.
Okay, so let's have a motion. Do we want to go with the diesel generator?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. So can I, want to add one more thing. The one thing that we haven't discussed is how much we're going to back up. And I think that's something that will come as we get a little further down into systems.
That will run off the diesel.
Right,
Yeah.
because there are some positives to VRF. One of them is it's electric based. So if your generator's size large enough, you can have heat in an event. There are some negatives to VRF. And that the initial startup cost is expensive, and the control costs are expensive, and the annual upgrade of the code of keeping the computer going is expensive, in our experience. Now, you have an expert, if he's willing to sign that he'll monitor it and take care of it for 10 years, I'll go VRF all day.
We'll swear him in as a special.
But VRF, in our experience, is the lowest cost per therm. Therm being a unit of energy. Unfortunately, the therm comes from electricity, and depending on your electric agreement with the town, that's not necessarily always the best way to go. In Greenfield, we do everything electric, because they have this unbelievably low rate on electricity. And don't ask me how they do it, but they have some super duper agreement to buy green energy from some farm. And so they do everything electric out there. Other areas, it ends up being a higher cost, even though you're using, from a love thy earth standpoint, you're using less energy, but the cost may not be less. And I think that we probably, need to understand that. None of the deltas between the cost of any of these is gonna be that great, because the building's so small. It's a tiny building. When I looked at our budget and how far we would go, I always envisioned 2 small package units in the trusses. And the reason I did was because I can get them under 5 tons. I can get 2 4-ton units in those trusses to run that building, maybe a third if needed. And I don't have to hook them up to fire alarm, I don't have to, all the points, I don't have to do all that extra stuff that you have to do when the units are greater than 5 tons. Plus, they become redundant units in case one goes down. So my recommendation in my mind as we were going down the path of selling this building. It was never that I envisioned would go down the path of VRF or a hybrid system, or a system that was highly controlled, because it's such a small space. I mean, the balancing of the building should make the spaces comfortable, not individual controls. I know that sounds bizarre, but
No,
that's the way it should be.
yeah.
And then you can disagree with me or agree with me.
No, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, the individual control aspect of the VRF is not something I care about. I actually asked the architect, can we group some of these together so we don't have 15 zones?
Right.
It's just the numbers and the operating efficiency and
It's,
things like that.
it's incredible. I mean, I just did a whole city hall, for a building that was built in 1908, VRF, and they love it. But it's, it's a 48,000 square foot building, and there's some economies of scale. And, they can go on the computer and look at every room and see what every room's doing and all that. We're looking at a 6,000 square foot building here. We're looking at a house. Would you put VRF in your house? So, you.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how much of that.
At prevailing wage?
How much of that system were they envisioning doing that way versus doing?
Well, I think the discussion towards the end with the engineer was that that monitoring and control system was built into their cost, and they could back out, I think they said roughly 15, and I think in the email today it was 14.4 out of that, just to have the hang on the wall, regular old thermostat that you go up and down or program how you want. So they were able to take 14 plus off that
We're a
cost.
green community. Does that affect the decision at all as to what we install?
No, but as a green community, when did you become a green community?
With 2 years?
More than that.
Have you hit your 20% goal yet? You have to hit a goal of reduction of energy by 20%.
That was hanging here forever.
Yeah.
We tried to cash it last week. The big check, and sent back yesterday.
The check is just the annual stipend you get for doing little things. But you lose one of the things is with the green community, you have to designate, that you can put, solar anywhere and turbines in certain areas and things like that. But one of the things is you have to demonstrate that you can reduce your energy usage as a municipality. And usually it's done at the school level with lighting and
So we reduce lighting costs, but the problem is you have more things to plug in nowadays. So you look at,
I understand
like, go 5 years back compared to what we were using, and you put in all the new lights and everything, and that brings that cost down, but you gotta plug in the computer.
your biggest energy use, your smallest energy use is lighting. Your biggest energy use is tempering fresh air. And one of the things that we have to do here is have energy recovery. Besides the fact that it's a requirement of the Stretch Energy Code, which you must have adopted to be a green community,
We did.
that saves you a ton of energy. The energy recovery actually works pretty well. We did a school in Westfield that had the lowest energy cost I'd ever seen. And it also had 26 teacher grievances for bad air. And when we got into the building, there was a reason why there was no energy being used at the school. They didn't have any fresh air makeup in a whole high school, the entire school. Every fan on the roof was broken.
So what are we trying to get past here tonight?
I think you guys can decide what you want to do for your systems. I am going to stick with everything in this building has to be as inexpensive as possible at the beginning, but have long-lasting productivity. I'm not as concerned about the operating costs because it's such a small building. The delta between the VRF and a package unit is going to be minimal on a building that's 6,000 feet. I'm sticking with it.
What are you thinking? I mean,
Well, so the delta last time was about 75,000 between the base option and the VRF, and
For life of systems.
for a life cycle cost. And assuming they can pull that 14.4 out of it, it goes to, what's that, 90,000 difference over 30 years, so $3,000 a year.
They put more than 14.
14.4.
Did you see this?
Did that come through this afternoon?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. Can I I get a copy?
Yeah.
That's fine with the notes on it.
Oh, that's right, they got rid of one of the other boilers.
No, there's a $60,000 difference in the upfront capital investment, the way they had it, and it was total life cycle savings of 75.
What was the initial investment on the base option? Two something, two?
250, 251 or 250, just to be simple about it, and it was rounded to 310 for,
Yeah, so this one, they're, after they value engineered,
Devalue engineered. Sorry.
it's at 288 and change for the VE.
46
Difference of,
So $46 out of the $325 we have is gonna go to HVAC?
I mean, what's the what's that at $250,000? It's
It's less.
yes, sir.
$40.
All right, so let's talk about some other costs that aren't shown here,
Mhm.
okay? So your electric service is now a lot larger, because everything's electric.
This says gas,
Huh? Which one?
for the VRF,
No. The air-cooled VRF condensing units, where's the gas?
gas fired.
Oh, he's putting in high efficiency.
No, I think that's the domestic hot water supply.
Yeah, that's not,
Okay.
I'm crazy about the electric backup.
Still says how
the
much
generator,
gas fired condensing water.
so if you don't go with a gas-fired heat source, and maybe it is, and I'm not dug into it deep enough, and we don't need to decide this today. They didn't tell you had to decide it today, did they?
Yes,
Strongly
basically.
suggested it.
They strongly suggested it?
Which is why we asked for some additional information.
Basically,
What else?
The heat pump system with electric backup.
Yes, but the heat pumps that they're using, they pull, they'll pull the design heat out of a -5-degree day.
And I don't have any figures, but let me just add in that we do have a solar electrical purchase agreement. So that reduces our electricity costs in the town. And we do also have a cooperative electrical agreement, which also reduces the other electrical costs. I'm not exactly sure when they're going into effect. It should be fairly soon.
So he's supplementing the VRF with a loop. Looks like a perimeter loop.
What's in that one?
Hot water piping and accessories, including supplemental heating units. 24,000.
Is that,
Option 3.
is that what he's putting in the holding cell areas and the Sally
I
port?
don't know. The Sally Port he's got down here as hot water unit heater, $1,800.
Do we have the extra money to spend on the initial install, or how come we have tight out?
We don't have an extra dollar.
Since both of you weren't here, let me just take a moment. I mean, the point of us not deciding last time was because there were questions whether, one, some money could get backed out, which they did, and two, whether there were costs that weren't being addressed. In other words, there was a whole discussion about, and we should probably talk to that again, there was a whole discussion about, with the different options, what might have to happen with respect to the trusses. So we had 4 options, basically. We had the baseline and the VRF that we're talking about, and then there were middle 2 options that would require a lot of stuff up top, which they questioned whether they'd even be able to do trusses. And
Now, I had an email conversation with Zell on that, and I disagree with their interpretation of the trusses. The trusses are designed, they just show the load, the trusses are designed
I'm gonna say they haven't been built yet.
They haven't been built yet,
designed
they can make a configuration with a box in the middle, all the way down and create an attic space for the units. I'm just not buying that.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I read that today when I was going
Yeah.
over all of the options.
Right.
That where they haven't been, you know, they would have to increase the trusses. They haven't been designed, they haven't been purchased yet. So why- I
The
mean,
truss
why are they
is,
saying no?
and they don't even design the trusses, so what they do is they give the load of the trusses,
Yeah.
and the contractor has to design them. This is one of the things designers do, they shift burden of liability to the general contractor, and so they'll give the load, the truss manufacturer will submit the structural calculations that it works for the load points that they say. Where there is definitely an increased cost is, you know, the 1 hour rating around the room, a couple of lights in the, you know, convenience lighting up there, and probably another little fan up there for heat. Because believe it or not, everything's so well insulated, it's gonna need heat in the room that you're generating heat. So, there is a small cost, but the cost of not doing it, I think, is greater. I'm more concerned with what's not on here, and that is the cost of the electrical system, and the fact that if you're on natural gas as your primary for everything,
That's our intent, because we do
you
want to.
could run a smaller generator, because all you're really doing is running fans to run your heat, because the heat is coming from the natural gas. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, and the overall size of that generator, if we go the other route, it's gonna be big,
It's gonna be big,
very big. And I know what they cost.
sorry, I'm the bearer of bad
I
news.
mean, we're not just
Everywhere I
looking
go.
at the additional cost of the RF system, we're talking about the increased cost in the electrical and the increased cost
Oh, yeah.
of the generator. This is only one increase we're looking at.
I know.
I guess part of what was kind of not so pleasing about the baseline system is how entirely inefficient it is. 80% efficiency,
I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the most efficient way to go.
but it doesn't seem like there's a way we can do it otherwise, because the other more efficient systems that weren't this, just that it didn't seem like you did have a potential for an increased cost because of how the trusses have to be designed. They all of a sudden become as expensive as this thing, and what's the point?
I would respectfully disagree with that whole entire argument that this thing will be more expensive and then some. I disagree. This wouldn't be the first time that GGD and I have had disagreements. If you remember in my interview, I told you, you guys asked a question of what was my worst project, my worst failure in a project, and I told you it was the Rockland Senior Center. And because we had a VRF system that was designed for the Rockland Senior Center. I told them you couldn't afford it. They went forward and did it. And it came in at a lot more per square foot than the engineer had indicated. And we ended up going with package units in the end. You have an entire energy recovery system outside of the VRF system with this, where you don't have that with the package units. And I just, through experience, this is a bigger upfront cost. I think your payback is not gonna be as great as you think it is. I think you'll be long dead and in the ground before you cross that line.
Damn it, I hate being dead in the ground.
Wow, this is not a good committee
What
tonight.
she said.
We got people dropping off to I mean, look at it. Look, if we could build a completely solar building, I'd be telling you to build a solar building. We can build a completely solar building. We could be a net zero building. We need 4 million.
What is the option one, boilers with the hydro air system?
Well, the baseline.
Baseline is just an 80% gas-fired
It's a
furnace.
it's a furnace inside a ducted system.
Yeah,
And then option one off the base is like a 90+% efficient system. And
boilers,
gas-fired furnaces. Option two is the hydro air system, which is only, the engineer is saying is only $3,000 less than the VRF system.
really?
Yep, that's what their numbers are showing.
So the two, I mean, the system that we just put in, this one that you see up on the ceiling, I saw some of these on the, with the system that we have downstairs now. We have 2 boilers downstairs now. We're saving a lot of money with this particular system. There's no
We're
way
not,
seeing
we're
it.
not putting this in any place else.
No, but there are similar units.
It's-
And I saw
I
that
don't
in
know
one
what
of the
system they
options,
have here,
and
so
I
I'm
thought
not
that
gonna
was,
comment on it.
I thought this system was
but
the RF system.
This isn't VRF, I don't think.
No, there would be no boiler with a VRF.
I'm not gonna ever, I'm never gonna deny that the most efficient system is VRF, because it is, per therm.
But
But I don't think we
Well,
can
we can't
afford it.
afford it.
I don't think we can afford it. I just don't think we can afford
What
it.
the
I'm not trying to be the bad guy
What are
here,
the
but
annual projected savings?
I don't care about the
Can I have my
annual
paper
projected
back?
savings. You're not gonna get to the annual savings if the bid comes in at 2.6 million.
Yeah, I know.
So the difference between
Over
the
30
baseline
years.
and the VRF is
What? Add
36,000
15 to that
dollars.
Because they value engineered something.
No, the difference between the baseline and the VRF is projected at $36,000.
Right, and that's
You
not
can't tell me
including-
it's 36,000 because it's not bid yet.
Okay,
You know, $2,500 a year.
and that's not including any projected differences in
There's no,
the
that,
space.
that's not,
Yeah,
he's not
space.
talking about the increased electric size, which by the way means we have an increased mitigation fee, okay, from the electric company. There's a lot of parts and pieces to this. That they don't, the engineers are engineers. They're bean counters. They're accountants with therms. They're accountants with therms. And he's presenting you a picture that is accurate, right there, if you just took the HVAC system.
We're only talking about $2,500 a year in savings, possible.
That's why, to me, it's a no-brainer to go with the package on it.
I don't see that
I'm
as a huge
sorry,
amount.
I'm sorry that we're not gonna be the candidate in Plymouth County for Earth Day next year, but this is reality.
Yeah, but I don't think that was fully, our goal was that, to come back with more information, because we didn't feel like we had the numbers to be able to make the decision last week.
We didn't have enough information, but there was talk about the trusses and not holding
Oh,
weight.
I believe me, I wish I was here, I would've punched everyone out.
Yeah, there were so many moving parts there that we needed more information on.
Right. I mean,
They did.
the number was so big to begin with that, I think we were all kind of uncomfortable with any of the numbers. But then when we started poking at it and they said, well, you can take 15 grand off of this one if we use regular thermostats and stuff, that's like, well, hold on a second, what are the real numbers? Before we go and do something and try and.
Did
and we can't get
GGD
everything-
present,
Yes,
Dominic?
I don't know which one it was.
But, yeah, they were here.
Yeah, I mean, they're very competent engineers. I don't want you to think that they're selling you a bill of goods. They're very competent engineers. They love VRF systems. They're also the premier engineer that's doing displacement ventilation, which I noticed isn't on there, which I was surprised about, which is as you know, dehumidification, not cooling. So you dehumidify the building, and it's great. It's being used in a lot of schools right now because they don't really go during the summer where the real peak is. So they dehumidify the building, and your body can tolerate a higher temperature, even if it's dehumidified. And the opposite occurs in the winter. The heat gravitates to the body and you're actually heating the space around the person as opposed to the entire space. I know it sounds like scientific and weird, but that's how it's explained. But I'll do whatever you want. I just want you to be conscious that we really have a tight budget here, and I don't know where to grab money.
It was already.
We're looking at, yeah, this is 10% of your budget. For just HVAC, it just seems a little bit, I'd like to try and trim it as best we can.
Do you think there's some, I mean, clearly on the VRF, there was some fat to be trimmed. Do you think there's any fat to be trimmed on some of the other systems?
Yeah, I just looked at it, he's got 3 5-ton units. I'd get that down to smaller units, because now I have an increased cost on my fire system. I got 3 zones I gotta add. I gotta add smokes in the duct. That's maintenance, that's testing. I don't need to tell you, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
How many tons on the base system?
Huh?
How many
He's
tons
saying 15 tons.
on the base?
On the VRF, he said 15 tons worth of cooling. Well, it's similar to heating.
Is that a lot? Anything like a lot?
15 tons.
I mean, look at the
It's fairly-
occupancy, what's the occupancy of the place? How many, you got 5, 6 people in there at once?
Yeah, but it's still.
And you're gonna
the
have
same
an
kind of discussion as-
extremely efficient building. You're gonna have
It's not gonna
If
be
it's
built
huge
like,
R-value walls and huge
Yeah.
R-value ceilings. Your energy costs in this building is gonna be recirculating air. When the building, and if the building's not occupied, we can turn that off too.
I'm under the impression that they haven't changed some of their calculations with the way the new buildings are being built, with the energy code. They're still calculating using the higher figures.
I can't comment on that.
I
I don't
know,
know what
but
they
you
use for
want to.
figures. I would assume that they've used higher R-value.
Yeah.
I have to, because it's now 5 years into
Yeah, in the beginning, he
issues
was
and thick
saying,
walls.
he introduced it, and I believe he mentioned a few of those items that, we would have in our, I forget what we had, for the different R-values for the wall and ceiling, but he did mention those.
We're gonna far exceed the code on the R-values of the walls and the ceilings. If we don't, that would be a travesty, because that's where we can save a ton of energy.
It's not the walls, it's the doors and windows and the ceiling where the energy is saved. The walls and
It's not even the
the,
ceiling,
don't talk.
It's the envelope of the building.
it's how tight the
How
building
tight
is.
and they-
How tight the
That's-
building is and how efficient the ERV is. Because think about it, okay, you're changing your air 6 times an hour, or whatever the value is for a police station. So you're taking all that heat and sending it out, all right, and replacing it with fresh air. So the ERV pulls the therms out of the heat without changing the actual, you're sucking the heat out of it, but you're exhausting the bad air. So I'm expecting we're gonna have a system that has at least a couple of carbon dioxide detectors in here, because why even have the ERV running if you only have 5 people in the station? It's kind of crazy. So those are the types of things that I want to see that we do, because it's the ERV that's going to save us a ton of energy. It's not going to be the delta between the systems. Do I ruin your day?
Me?
I honestly don't think any of us.
Rob's system, and Jason's going to go after you today. He wants that VRF.
I mean, is it-
This is his bailiwick.
Doesn't the VRF system depend on the users also? I mean, not just what you set it up when you get it set up. There's gonna need constant adjustment.
Well, in
In order
fairness,
for it to
in
be-
fairness, all systems need constant
In order for
adjustment.
it to meet, these good numbers. I mean, there's a potential that you're not gonna meet these numbers. You're not gonna get that kind of payback.
Well, I don't know.
If you don't have the right people.
None of
using it.
the systems you have are gonna give you the payback if you don't maintain it.
Yeah, and then what, I know on the residential side, when they do heat calcs and everything, they're assuming you're not gonna have the heat any higher than 68 degrees in the winter, and the cooling is not gonna be below 78 degrees in the summer.
Which is a
So
joke.
that's your base load calculations are assuming those set points. So I don't know if it's similar in commercial and municipal stuff.
Well, the other thing is, in your house, you don't change outside air.
So
So,
we do now.
well, you might now, but you didn't forever.
If you're doing new building now, you're pretty much stuck with an ERV.
Well, it's a good thing. For allergies, at least.
What do you wanna know? Pain in the neck?
No,
You, him.
Yeah,
bottom line is we want
You
to build
died
this.
tonight, you were called a pain in the neck tonight?
Bottom line, we want to build it.
Yeah.
And we want to build it for less than 3 million.
No, you want to build it for less than 2.25 million.
2.2,
That's what we have for the
okay.
budget.
Huh? 2.25?
Yeah.
Where'd the rest of it go?
I told you that basement was gonna cost us.
You got your architect, you got your minimum wage for the OPM, you have,
How much a pizza cost? Obviously
you
not.
have furniture, fixtures, things like that. There's a lot of parts and pieces to this.
2.2.
I think that, if I remember, that was what we had, 2.25 or 2.3.
If I might,
It wasn't a lot.
I'd like to just step back and it would be nice to have all the bells and whistles and the greatest of everything, but we have a finite amount of money and we need to keep our eyes focused on the big picture and getting it done and getting it done for that price. And if it means going with a baseline, I know one of the other things that a lot might like to see happen is that driveway cut put in. But that'll only happen if we have, yeah, we gotta get the building first.
Can I make a suggestion? Can I reach out to the architect tomorrow and let him know that we're leaning towards the cheapest system possible, but we haven't made a decision? And let me go in and meet with him and the engineer and sit down with him and explain to him really where we are and how we have to get there. And let's see if we can't find something that increases the efficiency but keeps the cost down. Because VRF is not gonna be it. It's a small VRF job. You're gonna get file sub-bidders that are not, this is not a big job. You know, I want something simple, because we're not gonna get the cream of the crop for file sub-bidders. This isn't a huge school where we're getting, you know, one of the names that gets the service and the quality out of the control guys, gets the service and the quality out of purchasing. And I just wanna do this right. I'm gonna be saying no to everything I can on this job, and you guys can outvote me, and I'm okay with it. I'm trying to get this thing built. I promised you you'd have a police station, and I don't think if we go VRF, we're gonna get there. I think we're gonna be over. And I think there's gonna be other things that come down the line. And when we get that first estimate after DD, I think we're all gonna be going, how can we save money? And the first thing we're gonna look at is VRF. I don't wanna go there, because once we eliminate VRF, we eliminate electric service size, and so on and so forth. So I just know where it's going, and it's like, I have 30 years of experience telling me not to go this route on this small building. But if I had an unlimited budget, I'd be suggesting VRF, and I'd be agreeing with GGD, because it is the most efficient way to go. We just don't have that option. We never promised town meeting this was gonna be a LEED building, or a building that was super energy efficient. We promised them that we'd build them a police station, and that's really the role that I think that the committee has.
Well, I think there are gonna be other places where we are gonna need to spend a little more.
Yep.
Especially on the outside of the building.
I wanna be able to at least put a light on the outside of the building.
Well,
Yeah, I'd bet-
where we know that there's gonna be significant maintenance costs if we go a cheap route.
I'd rather be tight up front, and as we move along, if we see we got a little leeway, spend it. But,
I mean,
you know,
I'm not, believe me, I want you to have a police station. I don't want us to go and lose 3 months here and then have to start redesigning all over again. Because first of all, the first person to ask for a change order is not gonna be the
Yeah.
OPM. It's gonna be the architect.
Yeah.
Well, you guys voted the system. That's the first thing that's gonna come out of his mouth.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to prevent us from getting to that point. And you guys can outvote me. I'm okay. I don't give a vote. But I'm trying to get the station built. Everything I can think of is gonna be as cheap as possible with long-term thoughts. I'm not asking you to put in a residential HVAC unit. I'm asking you to put in a robust HVAC unit that's not gonna require a lot of maintenance. But it's gonna use a little more energy than a VRF system.
Well, I think too, that there's other costs that, clearly the generator difference in size and the cost there is not something that's on the table with this.
No.
As well as we have a system that it sounds like, you feel is probably bigger than what we.
It's not bigger,
It's,
I'm concerned, and I want you to correct me, because I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong. If you think that these systems now have become so commonplace that the average commercial guy that's gonna bid on this, which is a small, $200,000 HVAC project, if you think a guy's gonna bid on this is gonna have the knowledge to do it, I may think a little bit differently. I just don't see it yet. It's not that commonplace.
It's getting there. I'd say about half the guys out there
Can do
are
it.
comfortable bidding on a job like this. There's still holdouts, no offense, but a lot of the older generation is still not,
They aren't buying
they
it.
aren't buying into it.
I didn't buy it the first time I installed it until I walked through the building and went, wow, this is unbelievable.
It's primarily the younger guys that are jumping on it, and the guys that are 5-6 years from retiring are,
They're
it's
not
one
gonna
more
go
thing
there.
they'd have to
Learn.
and go, it's definitely a different animal. But we're still 4 or 5 years away from it being every guy, HVAC guy that's out there has got some sort of part on his truck for a mini split system.
But, I think to Dan's point, we're seeing this with the water treatment thing at the school, you know. It's a small, big job and a big, small job, and that's not a good place for you ever to be in, because there aren't, you're not gonna get 10 bids in. You know, at which point you get one or two, and,
Did you get two?
yeah, we'll talk later. You know, we did get two, which is yay.
Over budget?
Oh, yeah. So, but that's a problem, and again, this is a small building, you know, and as much as I think it would be great for us to put the most efficient system in there, you know, for a and be able to have a crystal ball to know what all the long-term costs are, it doesn't seem like this is perhaps the place to put the money.
Sad part is, if this was if we were in any other state than Massachusetts, and we didn't have file submitting, and we didn't have such a robust prevailing wage law, we could do this building, and build it any way you want for the amount of money you have. It's just, public construction is literally 50% more than private
Are we
construction.
spending too much
All
time on this, or is
day
there gonna be other
long.
things that, I mean, are we spending a lot of
This
time
is
on
10% of our budget.
I know.
So it's, I
It is,
don't
it
think we're
does,
spending too much, but.
No, I don't, I'd like the opportunity to sit down with the architect one-on-one with his engineer, whether it's a go-to call and someone participates from the committee, or whether it's, you know, me in his office. I'd like that opportunity. I don't cost you anything, so
You're
it's
just
not
gonna
like.
beat him up for us, correct?
I'd what?
You're gonna beat him up for us?
I'm not gonna beat him up. I wanna understand his logic. I wanna understand his logic on suggesting this, knowing the budget. I mean, they know the budget. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand it. Yes, put them in the trusses, it was a little bit more, but it's nothing compared to the electrical service costs. Copper is expensive.
Tell me about
When
it.
those wires start getting like this instead of like that,
Yeah.
it's expensive.
Especially now.
Yeah.
The cost
And we
of-
we don't even know what the load is, so we don't know what we're gonna get back charged by, the electric company. And they're gonna back charge us. They're gonna make us pay for the transformer
Yeah.
and the pad if it's pad mounted,
Yeah.
or the can if it's pole mounted. We don't even know any of that.
They're gonna be bad, they have been.
They're planning on a pad, but that's not up to them.
Yeah.
All right, it's not that big a building. I'd be surprised if the electric company wants to do a pad.
They've
Yeah.
been pretty bad lately.
Electric,
All my experience so far is everyone is screaming about the costs. of-
back charge.
Yes,
I know.
on everything. I mean, look what we tried to do down the transfer station, trying to get three-phase down there. What was the final number? To change every single pole going down?
Well, first, he couldn't get the electric company in there to put the poles in. He had to hire a private contractor. They couldn't give him a time,
Well, that's-
sometime.
We'll cross the electric company problem when we get to the electric
When they
company. There'll be time
deregulated-
we have to call in political favors to get that done, we'll do it.
Even when they, I mean, even still, they have the right to charge these fees because during deregulation is when this all happened, when they were able to recoup. And they're recouping from projects like
I
this.
know.
Large
And
amounts.
it's unappealable.
Uh,
I've asked for a breakdown, they said, we'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah.
What do? You stop your project and get your breakdown?
Pretty much.
Or do you just, or do you know, they put a gun to your head, and there's nothing you can do.
And monopoly.
So basically, you think we should go with baseline, and also that you can talk them into some sort of reduction there, a more efficient system, something.
Maybe somewhere between baseline and option one, or option one, you know, I'm not ruling out option one. But I, even baseline, I wanna make sure they're 4-ton units and not 5-ton units. Right, there are things that I wanna see in the building to prevent us from having a high fire alarm cost. All right, so, you know, you have a small building, it should be a simple fire alarm system that Billy the kid can put in, not a system that requires the guy with the PhD and the laptop.
You know my brother?
You know what I'm saying?
I think a couple of things. One thing, I think it's a good idea for you to talk to the engineer. And last week, when we met, correct me if my memory is not good, but I think the engineer said it was important to make a decision on this because as they go forth to design the building and the trusses and the attic space, they need to know what to include there. So this was an important decision.
Agreed, and that's why I want to meet with him immediately. So I'll reach out to Jeff Shaw and ask him if I can come up and sit him down, because I I wanna show them some buildings we've done that, I did a school that's $165 a square foot. It's the most efficient school I've got. It's got a very inefficient HVAC system. The electric bill and the heating bill is really low because the walls are thick, the roof's thick. The ERV works well internally on these units, but if you look at the nameplate, it's an 80% plate. There's 8 of them. 4 tons, 4 tons, 4 tons, 4 tons, 4 tons, 4 tons, 4 tons. Right, so we knew what we were doing when we did this. And these we hung from the trusses, we didn't put them in the trusses because we had the ability to do that. The outside walls were metal stud. We didn't build a wood frame, we built them out of metal stud. We had wood trusses and a metal frame building, all right? And we got the loads to work, we got the slab to work, we got all those things to work. It took a lot of meetings to get the cost per foot of this building down. In the end, when you walk in this building, it looks like any normal school. You would never know what the structure was. And it's rated for a hurricane.
Okay, so Art was right, and that Context was adamant that they needed to have.
I agree with him at this point. So let's talk about Context for a second. So Context gave us a proposal of X. We immediately told them, absolutely not, you gotta get that down. Their response on getting it down was, we need one meeting to get an agreement on the plan and the location of the plan, which we did. And we can't spend too much time on DD, we gotta go straight to CD. So the too much time in DD is type of structure, type of HVAC system is the 2 primary things that they need to know right now in DD. So technically, they're doing everything they said to give us that reduced fee, and I think we owe it to them to try and get them a decision ASAP.
I mean, from everything I'm hearing, I think we're leaning towards either baseline or some option 1 or a hybrid in between, which is basically the same package, just a matter of how efficient the burner is.
Correct.
So I think we can give them that decision and just subject to your discussions as to what that system actually comprised of and things like that.
I wanna understand the loading of, and this is me, I wanna understand better the amperage on the VRF, the total amps, and the total amps on the boiler, gas-fired boiler. Because it should be like this
Yeah.
in reality, but I want them to see that. Because I want them to understand why we made our decision too.
But
Because
that's
there are other
something we need
pieces,
to-
especially since we're doing a generator. So, because we do a generator, and we have amps here instead of amps here. That generator's gone from a simple 400 kW to a, 800 kW. I don't know, are we single phase out in the street, 3 phase? I haven't even dug that deep into it yet. If we're 3 phase, there's a lot of parts to this that I just don't want to rapidly make a decision because we've done it, which we should be doing. But just one more little crack at the apple is what I'm asking for. And I apologize for not being at the last meeting. Maybe we could have gotten that done today if I was at the last meeting, although I doubt it because of the emails I had back and forth with Zell and Jeff. They were pushing for this, and I don't know why. I can't get into their brain as to why they're pushing for it. Maybe they want it to be super energy efficient and they want to love Earth like we all want to love Earth, but we can't afford to love Earth. We have to build a building that meets code and can be affordable.
So what I'd like to know now is, do we make a decision on the style? Or do we put that off a week and meet next week?
I'd like to give Dan the authority. I mean, why should we wait for another meeting? I mean, we know kind of what we're gonna vote on right now, the option, the baseline or a little better. Why not just give Dan I mean, this is kind of why we hired him in the first
That's right.
place, is to tell us when we're being knuckleheads and maybe potentially holding this stuff up. I don't have a problem going with baseline or a little higher, depending on what he works out.
Unless there's something, you find out that.
If I find
changes
out,
everything
if I
around.
find out that baseline is within $10,000 or $15,000 of VRF, then I think I'll pull the board, which I can do, because I'm not on the board. But if my thought process is, I'm pretty sure that this is a 50,000 plus delta between the two. I'm doing thumbnail math in my head and on the back of a napkin, I'm pretty sure it's a $50,000 difference,
By the time you do the service and the generator.
at least.
Yeah.
The generator alone is probably
And
20
the rest
grand.
of the part that's scaring me.
Right. and the size of the wires becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and we don't know what we're gonna get charged for the transformer, like upsize. And these
Depends on what
things
we
they
do
don't
with
think
this.
of.
I mean, we have single-phase and three-phase out there. There's a three-phase bank down the bottom of the hill, but they may increase the size of that to do ours, if we want three-phase. But 2 meetings ago, we talked about a single-phase service.
Because we don't have an elevator.
We don't.
Right.
And the fact that the single-phase equipment is larger, rather than a 4-ton, you may have to put a 5-ton unit in because it's single-phase. You'll see, yeah? You might.
Okay, so,
It's the amperage either way. It's gonna
I understand that,
use
but the amperage is half on a three-phase
I know.
service. You understand?
Three-phase is better.
Right, it's
Yeah.
better. And the fans run more
And we'll
efficiently.
be able to put smaller equipment in.
And your wiring's smaller, so your costs are smaller.
I know, that's
So
why,
there's a balance there that I just don't think we've dug into.
yeah, single-phase generator is gonna cost.
But a three-phase service also requires a transformer inside the building.
Why?
'Cause you're gonna be taking that transformer and you're gonna have to peel off a phase.
You know, for what? Ooh,
You're gonna have everything 277 for lighting,
it comes out three-phase, 208.
208? No,
Yeah.
480,
So you
277.
Are you talking 477 for operating on the
480.
You see the little sticker on the bottom
on
of
the
your
lighting
chargers?
and
That's what
and
they're
the
talking
heat?
Okay.
I'm talking about trying to get the wires down as small as possible, because that's a big cost. That's what I'm trying to do. And I want that
And that's
discussion. If
only
we're
for the
480,
AC.
277, and we have a small transformer to provide 110, that may be a lot cheaper than running everything at 208, 120.
The AC load of this building is gonna be a lot smaller than the heating load of this building.
Really?
Yeah,
Why?
because of the climate we live in.
Well, I mean, the AC is typically the highest.
Yes,
During
but,
the
And the
month.
VRF system, just so you know, is very inefficient in the summer and very inefficient in the winter. Extremely efficient, like
Spring and fall.
spring and fall. Like unbelievable, so much so that if you average out the year, it becomes the winter.
all right. Then I would say a motion to agree to the baseline or phase one type system, pending any miraculous discovery that,
If something's really off to kilter, I'll literally individually email you all, so we do not violate open meeting. I'll lay it out, you can say yea or nay.
so,
Who's gonna arrest us?
Person watching on TV,
You just know what I
all right,
did.
so
he's trying to be town manager in some other town.
we have that motion, we have a
I
second.
would second.
And a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So, do we need a meeting next week?
I'll let you know by Monday.
Monday's a
Monday
holiday.
holiday.
I
Yeah,
have to post the meeting
Yeah.
By
tomorrow, and
Friday.
it's still iffy, so.
We probably-
Is it, now, can I ask you a question, is it possible we can meet on Thursdays? One of the problems I'm having with the Wednesdays is it occasionally conflicts. And that's why every once in a third or fourth,
We got a big job going on.
do you have a conflict on Thursday?
Yeah, I
Every
have,
other.
Okay,
yeah, we have ZBA on
got it. Got it.
Thursday.
I'll have to work it out on my end.
so at this point, let's plan on the 13th. We have a difficulty in the clerk's office this week, we're closed Monday, it'd be hard to post it next week anyway.
So
We just don't feel like it either.
He only comes every other meeting anyway.
Well,
But I remember, I thought they were every 2 weeks.
now that the
Well,
pool season is closing.
Tara did say that if we needed a meeting, we could shoot it to Bree and she could
Yes.
stamp it, so.
So we can get it in, I'd have to do it
I'm
tomorrow.
like, you know.
let's skip it for now.
The dog hasn't even been in it.
Okay, so tentatively scheduled for the
13th.
13th.
Right.
At 6. Any
And I don't
other,
have a meeting on the 13th, so I can make it.
any other business we need to discuss tonight?
Pizza? It really
Dan, do you have
is we
anything
put on
else?
I don't
the
have
agenda.
anything else, Madam Chairman.
No? All right, motion to adjourn,
Made?
and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, thanks for watching.
You been on your boat?
No.
Why not?